Hello and welcome to PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale History, where today we'll be taking a look at Toro Inoue, Sony Japan's cuddly little cat mascot. In 1999, Sony wanted to experiment with handheld gaming. No, I'm not talking about the PSP. Instead, I'm talking about the Pocket Station, a memory card-sized little gadget with a tiny LCD screen that could play little mini-games, with the added bonus of being able to hook it up to PS1 games for bonuses. For those of us in the West, we mostly know of the Pocket Station due to an inaccessible chocobo minigame in Final Fantasy VIII. Oh yes, that's right, the Pocket Station was never released in the West. But for Japan, one of the most popular games for the device was a cute little virtual pet game that made extensive use of the device's functions. This was Doko Demo Isho, aka Together Anywhere, a game that saw you interacting with an adorable little cat named Toro who wanted to be human. The success of Doko Demo Isho led Toro to become something of a mascot for Sony in Japan and appeared in a variety of virtual life games for years to come, and eventually became the face of a new service on the Japanese PlayStation Network. He also managed to get himself a minigame collection on the PS3 called Let's Party, which to this day is the only Toro game to get an English translation, albeit only released in Hong Kong. While Toro has been an exclusively Japanese phenomenon, he has begun to make appearances in the West, whether it's through a Little Big Planet costume, an exclusive character to the PS3 version of Street Fighter Cross Tekken, or indeed PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Toro's an odd little character. He makes use of stance changes and a crazy array of moves with varying influences. So let's take a look at this cute little fella, shall we? Toro was not a complicated character design-wise. His body was made up of basic shapes, his facial expressions typically consisted of a limited array of pre-drawn faces, and his movements were a limited set of predefined animations that were used for various purposes. Among these movements was a little wave, which would be used at various points in his games. This literally consisted of him waggling his little arm up and down since he didn't really have hands or visible joints. Another common movement was a little nod. This would usually pop up if he was puzzled by something and questioning something that was going on. It was another simple animation that saw him tilting his head forwards a little bit with his body leaning forwards a little bit too. Both of these were the inspirations for fighting moves in PlayStation All-Stars. His wave became a slightly silly looking jab punch move, while his nod became a headbutt, usually accompanied with a worried face because headbutts kind of hurt, and Toro is adorable. Other general animations were used for some of Toro's intros and outros. Toro's introductory wave and bow and his unique little dance were used as an intro, and his happy little waggle was used as a winning outro, and a sad arm folding expression and the dizzy animation that played whenever he was hit by something both became losing outros. A laughing animation and one where he placed his paws together and put on a cute expression both became taunts as well. In Toro's games, there would often be an opportunity to just sit and watch Toro as he went about his daily activities, which ranged from video games to rolling around on the floor. Sometimes he'd do more practical things, such as clean his house by sweeping around the place. Sometimes all these activities would make Toro very tired, and he'd need to take a nap. Sleeping seems to be something Toro liked to do quite often in his games, possibly because he's a cat. The sweeping and napping are both moves in PlayStation All-Stars. Yes, really, this is a thing. Sweeping gives Toro a melee move that can hit either side of him, while napping allows Toro to steadily charge his AP. Of course, it can be difficult to keep opponents off you while you're snoozing. Sometimes Toro would do some exercises where he would do some kitty push-ups. This also became an intro and a taunt for Toro in PlayStation All-Stars. Toro Let's Party was a minigame collection released for the 10th anniversary of Toro and his games. In this game, he wandered around seeking out people to help, all in an attempt to get enough thanks to get his wish of becoming human. This resulted in a lot of weird and wonderful minigames where Toro would learn skills or do things to help out characters who were struggling. The first game Toro could play involved Toro learning how to be a waiter, and he did this by learning how to yank a tablecloth off a table without disturbing whatever was sitting on top of it. I'm sure there's more to being a waiter than that, but apparently not in the Toro universe. A later game saw Toro training with amateur sumo wrestlers, allowing them to test out their skills. As expected, this minigame involved pushing your opponent out of a ring before they could do the same to you. Another minigame that wasn't actually part of the main story, but could be played as part of the minigame collection, was a basketball free throw game, where Toro had to throw basketballs into a net from gradually longer distances. All of these minigames inspired throws for Toro in PlayStation All-Stars. His down throw involves pulling a carpet from under his opponent, just like the tablecloth minigame minigame, his up throw seems to be based on the free throw minigame, and his side throw is just like the pushing in the sumo minigame. As Toro progressed in Let's Party, he gathered thank yous in a memory diary that he carried around with him. Whenever someone said thank you, a memory would be placed in the diary and Toro would do a celebratory spin. This spin move may be a partial inspiration for a spinning melee move in PlayStation All-Stars. However, he doesn't use the memory diary for it. As Toro journeyed in Let's Party, he carried a bag with him everywhere he went. Usually this bag just sat on his back, wrapped around his shoulders, but it would often take on a bigger role whenever Toro changed into outfits appropriate for each minigame. Toro would flatten the bag out into a screen which he would cover himself with, and when the screen fell, he'd be in a new outfit. The bag is used for melee attacks such as that spin as well as a swipe move, but the transformation effect also plays a large part in Toro's moveset, as Toro can switch between 3 outfits or stances, and this bag-based transformation is used to do that. Let's take a more in-depth look at that. So you might gather by now that Toro's games aren't exactly full of action and combat, which means Superbot had to look elsewhere to fill out his moveset. Now, one thing that's notable about Toro's personality is that he's known to play PlayStation games himself, and frequently talked about them in news updates in the free PSN news services Mainichi Issho and Weekly Toro Station. It seems that this love of video games turned into imitation, as one of Toro's first appearances in the West was as a special guest character in the PS3 version of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. A collaboration between Capcom and Namco bringing together their major fighting game franchises, a deal was made with Sony to include guest characters, which resulted in Toro and his friend Kuro, as well as Cole from Infamous, but we're not talking about him. This is where Toro's love of video games seemingly became imitation, as all of his moves were identical to Street Fighter's Ryu. Ryu has always been the face of the series, appearing in every iteration of Capcom's 2D fighter, and being a general all-round fighter that many people picked up on their first time playing. Many of his moves have become signature moves for the series as a whole, in fact. These moves, and subsequently Toro's in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, included a spinning uppercut move called the Shoryuken, which saw him punching upwards in a corkscrew motion. He also had a spinning kick move called the Tatsumaki Senpukyaku, where he jumped into the air and spun around swinging a leg outwards. He also had a donkey kick move called Jodan Sokutageri, where he would kick forcefully towards his opponent. And because Toro also used these moves in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, it seems he carried them over to PlayStation All-Stars, where they are all present. When transforming into the Justice Toro stance, where he wears a similar outfit to what he did in Street Fighter, Toro will perform a corkscrew uppercut which has to be based on the Shoryuken. His No More Justice move appears to be based on the Jodan Sokutageri, as it's a very similar donkey kick, while Toro has a spinning move in the air that appears to be this Tatsumaki Senpukyaku. But what of Toro's other Justice moves? Well, these are all from fighting games too. There's some more Street Fighter influence in here, but Tekken is also a possible inspiration as well, which certainly makes sense due to Heihachi's presence in PlayStation All-Stars. In fact, speaking of Heihachi, remember in his video where we talked about his demon uppercut? Well, that appears to have snuck its way into Toro's moveset as well, since his Uphold Justice move looks very similar. Of course, uppercuts are common fighting game moves in general, but the animation is so similar it's likely to be a Tekken reference. Karate chops are typically common moves in fighting games, and they make appearances in Street Fighter and Tekken, among others. For instance, Tekken's big head brawler Paul Phoenix has the hammer punch, which is very similar to a chop move. Heihachi has a version too, including his deadly lightning hammer move, which we discussed in his video. These moves are the likely inspiration for Break Thy Justice, where Toro performs a quick karate chop. It could be from any number of sources, but all the ones I just mentioned seem the most fitting. Elbow jabs are also fairly common in fighting games. Talking about Paul Phoenix again, he had a move in Tekken called the Flash Elbow, which was, well, him shoving his elbow into an opponent. I'm also informed that this is also a signature move in Sega's Virtua Fighter series for primary character Akira Yuki, but I haven't got footage for that. Toro has an elbow jab move too, and while it's not clear where exactly it comes from, Tekken or Virtua Fighter seem like likely inspirations. In Street Fighter there are a lot of aerial moves, because much of that game's fighting system involved jumping and weaving around, unlike Tekken, which was heavily ground based. Let's take a look at another crazy haired brawler, Guile, for a second. He had a move called the Rolling Sabat, where he performed an aerial roundhouse kick. You may remember that Heihachi had a similar move in Tekken 2, called the Wind Slicer. Either of these moves could be the possible inspiration for Toro's aerial fly-through Justice move, where Toro will perform a similar aerial roundhouse kick. Sticking with kicks, many of the female fighters in Street Fighter were known for their kicking skills. One of these was Cammy, whose moves included an upwards kick move called the Cannon Spike, which was essentially a powerful uppercut, using her legs. This move may be a possible inspiration for Toro's Rising Justice move, which is a very similar upwards kick that moves Toro up a little too. Finally, Juri Han in Street Fighter was particularly fond of using high kicks, especially as she was depicted as having one leg in the air at all times. Aside from a straight axe kick that landed her foot on an opponent's head, she also had a super move called the Kaizen Dankairaku, where she would jump up from a handstand, spinning her legs in a whirlwind, which launched her opponent into the air, while up there she would slam them back down with an aerial axe kick. These axe kicks are likely an inspiration for Toro's Down with Justice move, which is a similar aerial axe kick. So with Justice Toro out of the way, let's look at another stance. In one minigame in Toro Let's Party, Toro encountered a carnival owner who needed someone to dress up as an Oni, Japanese for ogre or demon, so that people could throw baseballs at him in order to dunk him in a pool. Toro decided to take on this role and became Oni Toro, which was the inspiration for the down circle transformation in PlayStation All-Stars. Later in Let's Party, Toro met a strange cat dressed like a rabbit who wanted to make mochi, a type of Japanese rice cake using confectionery. This prompted another minigame that involved pounding a barrel full of mochi rice while dressed as a rabbit, referencing a Japanese folktale about a rabbit on the moon who pounded mochi. This is the likely inspiration for Oni Toro's Mochi from Hell move, where Toro pounds a rice cake so big it explodes in two large blobs either side of him, causing damage. Mochi is also part of Oni Toro's other moves, which are primarily based on demon characters in fighting games. However, let's look back at Ryu and his signature move, the Hadoken, which was a ball of energy that he would force out of his hand, giving him a projectile move. Other characters had similar Hadoken moves too, but Ryu was the most prominent example. Naturally, Toro had this in Street Fighter Cross Tekken as well, and it was also translated into PlayStation All-Stars, although here instead of it being a ball of pure energy, it's a ball of mochi. Ryu also likely inspired Toro's aerial spinning move, where Toro spins a mochi mallet around himself, based again on the Tatsumaki Senpukyaku. In Tekken, Heihachi's family were known for harbouring a devil gene that gave them powerful abilities, although Heihachi himself skipped out on this. However, one move that was shared between him and his son Kazuya, who did get the devil gene, was the spinning demon move. You may remember this from Heihachi's video where it was used from a wave dash. Kazuya could also perform a twisting uppercut move, which Heihachi was also able to perform from a spinning demon. This is possibly the inspiration for Toro's revolving wrath, with kicks and punches being replaced with a mochi mallet. The move appears to be a mixture of Heihachi and Kazuya's versions, as Toro has the same jumping start as Kazuya, but he can also chain the move into a twisting uppercut like Heihachi. Street Fighter also had its own demonic character in the form of Akuma, a devil-style character with dark clothes and powerful attacks. Generally, Akuma had similar moves to Ryu, but also had a few tricks up his sleeve. Among these was a dive kick that he could perform in the air, essentially to close gaps easily. He wasn't the only character, however, as Juri Han also had her own dive kick that was a little easier to perform. Toro also has a dive kick in PlayStation All-Stars, which is likely inspired by Akuma's dive kick, especially as Oni Toro seems to draw inspiration from demonic characters, as previously stated. Another prominent example of a non-human character in the Street Fighter series was Blanka, a green beast man who had an unpredictable fighting style. Aside from an electricity attack, Blanka would also frequently roll around a lot, spinning wildly and throwing himself at opponents. This is the possible inspiration for Tony's Oni flip move, where Toro will perform a speedy spin flip that encases him in mochi. The exploding mochi makes this move especially deadly for anyone caught in its way, similar to how Blanka's moves were fairly unpredictable. Finally, let's take a quick look at another fighting game, the King of Fighters. It's a little more obscure than the big hitters we've talked about so far, but it's been around for quite a while now. Its lead character was a young martial artist named Kyo Kusanagi, and one of his moves was the 100 Shiki Oniyaki, which was a dual drill punch upwards. It's very likely that this semi-obscure move is the inspiration for Toro's Oni spin, as the dual mochi balls on Toro's hand seem very similar to the fiery fists of Kyo's move. It's an unexpected origin, but it's too similar to deny. Another mini-game in Let's Party, although one that wasn't part of the main story, was a game where Toro dressed as a ninja and chucked throwing stars at targets in a forest. Toro would have to pay close attention to the targets and turn around quickly to throw stars before the targets disappeared. It's a pretty fun game. This is the inspiration not only for Toro's final form, Torobi The Kat, but also the move that he performs when he transforms. Toro also has a separate move where he throws ninja stars above himself, perhaps referencing the multi-directional minigame. But the rest of the Torobi moves? For those, we'll need to look at Mortal Kombat, a fighting series known for brutal, bloody battles, the ability to physically murder your opponents in horrible ways, and for being pretty big on ninja characters. Possibly an odd choice for moves for a cutesy, family-friendly mascot character, but these moves are pretty unmistakable. Plus the fact that the word word cat is spelt with a K for this form, and the series is pretty fond of spelling everything with a K. Let's start with Scorpion, who is very much the face of Mortal Kombat. A ninja resplendent in gold clothes, his most iconic move was a chain spear attack that he would throw at an opponent, stabbing them in the chest before pulling them towards him with a cry of This is the basis for Scorpion Wants You, the basic triangle move for Torobi The Kat, where Toro chucks out his pet Scorpion, who never existed in his own games, and then pulls himself towards his opponent. Sadly, since Toro doesn't talk, he doesn't yell. Another ninja in the Mortal Kombat series was Sub-Zero, a rival of sorts to Scorpion. He had the power to manipulate ice, which he used in a variety of ways. One of these was a slide move, where he would generate a sheet of ice along the ground and slide along it towards his opponent. For Toro, this move changes the ice to some giant fish bones that would cause damage to anyone landing near him. Another ninja, Noob Saibot, had the ability to teleport by disappearing into the ground and reappearing through a portal close to his opponent, designed to catch them off guard. Toro steals this move too, now called Sneaky Portal, although the move works largely the same in principle. Finally, one non-ninja character in Mortal Kombat was martial artist Liu Kang, who was infamous for his bicycle kick, an aerial move that saw him literally running through the air, and in the process he would stomp repeatedly on his opponent's chest. Toro also had this ability, although he looks a little more laid back in his version. It also has the unfortunate name of Toropedo. So that's all of Toro's many normal moves, so let's recap all of that before we come back for the supers.
Level 1!
In the later Doko Demo Isho games, including the PSN news program Mainichi Isho, Toro had a close friend named Kuro, who is a black cat who acted as Toro's sidekick. Unlike the childlike Toro, Kuro was a much more brash character, with a love of gambling, getting drunk, and for flirting outrageously with women. He also had a habit of slapping Toro upside the head, usually if he was scheming something and Toro was naively asking him questions that could blow his cover. In fact, quite often Kuro shows a slightly abusive side towards Toro, not just smacking him, but also encouraging him to do things such as gambling or allegedly stealing his money. He did have good qualities too, mind, but the bad side is what we're interested in here. Why? Because this seems to be the inspiration for Toro's Level 1 Super in PlayStation All-Stars, where Toro seems to summon Kuro to help, possibly referencing how you can tag between the two in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, but instead of helping, Kuro drop-kicks Toro, propelling him forwards. Admittedly, this can net Toro kills, but Toro doesn't seem too pleased by being kicked around. Poor Toro.
Level 2!
Throughout his appearances, Toro had the wish of becoming human. When he wasn't filling in a memory diary to get his wish granted, he would often wish on shooting stars. He could be seen doing this in Toro Let's Party and other games, but there was also a game built entirely around this concept. Toro to Nagareboshi, aka Toro and the Shooting Star, started with Toro wishing on a shooting star, only for that star to come crashing down on his town, starting an adventure to fulfill people's wishes and restore the shattered star. This appears to be the inspiration for Toro's Level 2, where Toro makes a wish and immediately a shooting star comes crashing down on the stage, taking out anyone who gets in the way. Did Toro wish to win? We may never know.
Level 3!
For Toro's Level 3, once again we have to look outside his series and turn to Street Fighter. Akuma, the demonic character who provided Toro with his dive kick move, had a very distinctive special move he could pull out if his meter was high enough, called the Shun Goku Satsu, or the Raging Demon. This involved him dashing towards his opponent, causing the screen to turn blank. A flurry of unseen blows occurred, and then the camera cut back to show Akuma standing over his opponent triumphantly, while the kanji on his back, meaning heaven, glowed ominously. In Toro's Level 3, he hops into his Oni costume, furiously charges up his mochi mallet and immediately rushes towards his opponents, causing a flurry of unseen blows and leaving Toro standing alone with the kanji for human carved out on the floor behind him, once again referencing his desire to become human. Why he uses Akuma's special move I don't know, but that's where it comes from. And that's Toro Inoue. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time with a stage, although the powers of deduction mean you probably already know what it is. Stay tuned.
おしまい。